Our next session is a panel discussion on print and electronic media. Our panelists today represent some of the lead publishers in our industry. Bill Kinross is Vice President and Group Publisher of the Marketing and Technology Group in Chicago. He is directly responsible for two of the company's four brands, Meeting Place and Carnitech, which serve the meat processing industries in the U.S. and Canada, as well as Latin America. During his tenure at Marketing and Technology, Bill and his team developed and executed a unique strategy for conceiving, deploying, and measuring content in print and online that has led to rapid growth of both media and reinforced marketing and technology properties as industry leaders. They have built a revolutionary online reporting system and employed a new sales strategy to grow their business and better serve their clients. Patrick Young is with BNP Media and is the publisher of food engineering and related products. He joined BNP Media in early 2001. Prior to BNP Media, Patrick was an account manager with McGraw-Hill Healthcare. Before McGraw-Hill, he spent 19 years with food engineering as a district manager and associate publisher based in Southern California. He has a BS in Business Administration from Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, with a major in marketing and a minor in economics. He resides in Malvern, Pennsylvania, with his wife and two children. Dave Crost is the publisher of Meat and Poultry magazine. His tenure in business-to-business publishing spans 28 years, during which he has represented and published trade magazines in many industrial markets. He brings 13 years of experience to the food processing industry. Mr. Crost also has participated in numerous association boards and committees, including FPSA, NMA, NAMP, and AMI. Our first presentation will be from Bill Kinross, who will be followed by Dave Crost, and the presentations will be concluded by Patrick Young. Please welcome Bill, Dave, and Patrick.
Thank you. I sure hope I'm a lot more entertaining than that sausage session. Oh, that was the last meeting, sorry. 1800s, the railroad ruled the roost. It was the biggest form of transportation out there. And then came along a little thing called the airplane. And everybody said, the railroad is dead. The plane is here to take it over and it's gone. Let's fast forward a couple of hundred years later, maybe 100 years later. And here we are, and everybody is saying, what? Print is dead. By the way, Warren Buffett just spent $44 billion buying a railroad. And he said, railroads are our future. Print media. A lot of people are saying print is dead. He said it well. Like the railroad, print is going to have to reinvent itself. It can't continue to do what it's doing 10 years ago. If you are picking up a trade magazine, we call business to business or trade, and it looks the same way that it did 10 years ago or 5 years ago, that magazine is irrelevant and it won't be here in a few more years. Things are changing, and they're changing fast. Publishers, which we are, we have to embrace digital media. We've got to play to the strengths of both print and digital, and they both have strengths and they both have weaknesses, and they both have reasons for being here. And I will say it right up front, a proponent of both. The key is to match the message to the medium. And what that means is, if you're going to write a 3,000-word article, don't expect somebody to read it on a smartphone. Not going to happen. If you're going to broadcast the news, don't put it in a magazine that's coming out 6 weeks later. They don't care. They read it 6 weeks ago. So let's talk about the strength of print. First thing is permanence. What do I mean by permanence? I mean that a digital ad is here and then it's gone. A print ad is here and it's here and it's here again. How many times do you walk into a processor's plant and they're in the lobby or a couple of back issues of a magazine? You go into their office, there's some back issues. Probably if you go in the bathroom, there's some back issues. The fact is that print magazines stay around. And we know through a statistic that we keep track of, a metric called pass-along readership, that a magazine, on average, gets 2.5 reads per issue. So it's not just that one person that receives it, but it's the people after it that receive it. So it's about permanence. It's also about credibility. A magazine that has really good editorial. And when I define that, I mean the reader believes that it's good, high quality, relevant editorial. It has credibility with that reader. And when that reader sees the credibility of the editorial, they see that carry over to the advertising that's in that magazine. We call that the halo effect. So if you're advertising in a magazine with highly credible editorial, chances are your customers are going to think more highly of you and value your ad a little bit more. We look at performance. There's a thing called the business funnel, and it's a 5-step model. It starts with brand awareness, and it goes through to purchase intent. And in the readership or the research that's been done in this business funnel, it's been shown that print outperforms digital in 4 of the 5 steps. The problem with print is we have a really difficult time of measuring it. That's the real issue with print. And finally, we think it's all about engagement. When you get a magazine and you sit back in your chair at the office, or you're lazy boy at home, or you're on the airplane, you get into that magazine. You enjoy the graphics, you enjoy the photos, you enjoy the editorial content, the printed word. And as you do that, you really heavily engage in it. Our research, again, shows that people spend over 30 minutes with a typical issue of our magazine. So they're engaged, they're spending time with it, they're enjoying it. So what is digital media? It's a big term. It's the internet. That's where it all started. But today, it's mobile. It's digital magazines. It's video. It's social media. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. It's e-newsletters. It's e-blasts. It's webinars. It's apps. If you see those funny little codes that are on print ads today, they're called QR codes, quick response codes. That's part of the digital media. You click on that, you get taken to a website or to a video. Gets into technical things like HTML5 and responsive design. What's that? Well, it's a simple thing that says when you're on the internet, whatever device you're on recognizes it and it adjusts to the screen that it's on. So if I'm on the internet and I'm looking at it on my laptop, it's this big. If I'm looking at it on my tablet, it goes that big. And if I'm looking at it on my smartphone, it gets smaller, but it's still easy to read, and it does it on the fly. This is a new technology. You see a lot of the consumer media doing it. We're doing it at our company now. I think it's something you're going to see more of. So what's the internet? I mean, this is where it all started. This is the thing that screwed it all up for us, right? It's the reason why we go in and do email every day. It's the reason why half of you are probably glancing down right now to see what customer is trying to get in touch with you. When you think of the internet, that's what you think of, right? There it is on my computer screen. I'm going to go out and do a search. I'm going to check my email, whatever the case may be. But do you think about it there? Or do you think about it there? Today, 10% of all the internet page views are done on a mobile device. By 2015, over 50% of your page views are going to be on that device or that device. The laptop, the desktop is becoming obsolete. It's all becoming about mobile. That's where things are moving. And they're moving really fast. How about digital magazines? Anybody ever try to read a magazine on the computer? Flip books? The page is like this, and the screen is like that. Doesn't fit very well. But guess what? Mr. Jobs brought out a new device for us where I can turn it and now I can see the page. This is where things are going. This device is phenomenal. The reproduction, the ability to get interactive with it, it's just a phenomenal device, and that's where printed magazines are moving toward. They're moving toward the tablet or the iPad, as most people like to call it. 67 million of them out there right now. There'll be 250 million by the year 2015. This thing is not going away. If you don't have one, you're going to get one. You can fight it for as long as you want. The president of our company, who just got a smartphone last year, just got one of these. I thought that's the last holdout. If he got one, anybody's going to get one out there. That's where we're going. Here's another thing with broadband, and this is whether it's on mobile or whether it's on your laptop. This is where things are going. Multimedia, video. People love to experience video, and the smartphones and the iPads are phenomenal. I take the train into the city in Chicago, and I fly all over. I sit there and watch people watching movies on their smartphone. They love to watch video. And there are ways that you can take advantage of it. Our editors take advantage of it in news stories. Our advertisers take advantage of it in advertising response, where they say, instead of clicking on this ad and going to visit my website, why don't you just click on this ad and go watch my video for the product you just clicked about? It's really neat, and that's where things are headed. So what's the strength of digital? It's all about immediacy. Everybody wants it now, and they get it now. If I want some information, I pull out my phone, there it is. It's searchability. There's so much information that's out there. It's like a library. It's like the Library of Congress on every website. So how do you get it? You just hit the search engine. You get the information you want, you hit Google, you get it. Accessibility. So I talked about, you want it now, you get it. There it is, mobile. Boom. Ultimately very targeted. Magazines, by their very nature, are niche publications. Dave and I publish magazines for the meat and poultry processing industries. Pat publishes a magazine for people that are in plant operations across the food industries. We're in what we would call tightly defined niches. But what if I said, let's create something online just for people that process bacon? That's all there is. How many bacon plants are there out there? 50, 60, 200? I don't know. Keith Shackelford would know. There we go. 200 bacon lines and how many plants? You can do that. You can do that. Publishers can do that. And the flip side of it is marketers like yourself can do that as well, because there are ways to advertise using contextual-based advertising, using profile-based targeting, lots of different things that you can do to really hone in on an audience that says, these are the only people that I want to reach with this ad. That's a great strength of digital. So we mentioned multimedia, video, audio, graphics, print. It's all multimedia, and it's all out there, and it's all available in the digital world. And finally, the thing that all the presidents of the company and the CFOs are really happy about now, metrics. I give you this much money to spend on advertising every year. What do you got to show me for it? Well, now the marketing directors and the VPs of sales and marketing are going back and saying, I have this much in my budget, I invested it this way, and here are my results. It's a whole different paradigm now. It's all about metrics. So where are we going? We're going with fewer but stronger media brands. There's less competition in the meat and poultry space today. There's less competition in the food space today. Tom, you're out here, you've got the only dairy book in the industry now. There used to be more than one. What's happened is the weak are falling away because marketing executives and presidents of companies are not sitting around saying, let's put an ad together and let's run it in all 4 or 5 magazines. I'm done with the marketing for the year, let's move on. They're saying, hey, there's some new tools out here. And what they're finding is what used to be a magazine is now a media brand. And now it has many ways to touch that reader. And in fact, many of the brands touch the reader every day. They touch it through news, they touch it through blogs, they touch it through social media, they touch it through e-newsletters, e-blast, video. There's lots of ways to touch, but you're doing it with a media brand. So there used to be 5, now maybe there's 3, maybe in a couple of years there'll be 2. Tom, there's only 1. There's only 1 dairy book left. Only 1 dairy brand. Integrated marketing plans are where it's at. People are using digital, they're using print, they're playing to the strengths of both, just like the publishers are, the advertisers are too. And there is this increased focus on measurability and return on investment, and it makes the corner office really happy. Did I say video? Did I mention video? I think I did. Mobile. That's where it's all going. Video, mobile, and finally, what I call convergence. And that's where your printed magazine could very well not be printed anymore. It could be sitting on your tablet. You could get a notification saying, it's here. By the way, there's video in here. There's links to other stories. There's all sorts of enhancements to it. The tablet is where things are going. And the internet will be mixed in with the long-form journalism. So, how do you allocate your advertising dollars today? Here's some things to think about. Know who your customers are and know what they're doing, where they are, where their eyeballs are. If you're in an industry, understand what they're reading, because their reading habits today aren't the same as they were just a few years ago, or even just a few months ago. Digital's changed all that. Know the strengths and weaknesses of print and digital. Play those to your advantage. The more you know, the more you can take advantage of it. If you're a president of a company or a VP of sales and marketing, I feel really bad for you trying to keep up with all of this changing landscape and run your company, because it's a lot to do. My suggestion would be to invest in talent, whether it's outside of your company or inside of your company, to keep up with what's going on, because things are moving so fast, it's hard to keep up with it. And I applaud you for doing that. But we want you to run your companies, and we want your companies to get bigger, faster. Develop a relationship with media innovators. There again, whether they're inside the company, outside the company, publishing companies, advertising agencies like Alan back there. These are the folks that are keeping up with this, and if you've got a good relationship with them, they can help you. Think integrated. It's not print or digital. It's print and digital. How you balance it out, that depends on your objectives. Think mobile. Use video. Define your objectives. Select the media, whether it's print or digital or a combination of both, that match up best for you. And finally, you've got the tools. Measure it. Measure it so you know what your investment is doing, and when you go back for more money the next year, they're a little happier to give it to you. Thank you.
Hey, Bill. Can I grab that last seat so I can plug it? Sure.
Hello, I'm not. Is it on?
You want to use that?
Can you hear me? Great. Thank you very much. Bill, thanks. I thought that was a great overview on the changing landscape, as it were. I've got a brief presentation. No one likes to sit through a PowerPoint, so I'll try to make this as brief as possible. But I think what you'll find here is interesting, because this is much of what Bill talked about from the processor's point of view, in terms of how they're consuming media. How are they using print? How are they using digital? How are they using video? We did a survey with an independent company, so it's not a meat and poultry survey per se. And unlike other surveys, this was meant in no way, shape, or form to be a us versus them comparison. We really wanted to kind of dig in for our own information and find out how our processors consuming information. Now, again, this is specific to meat and poultry processors, but I think the findings will probably be viable over any, whether it's dairy or whether it's beverage. I think any industrial food market, there are similarities in the process, similarities in the way things are done, and similarities in the way in which they consume their media. So I won't take too much time on any one slide. If any of you would like a copy of these findings, I'll be happy to pass these along. But I think you'll find it interesting. Let me just get to the slide at hand. Again, the purpose of the study was to try and find out how readers use various industry information sources: print, online, video. Pardon me?
Talking to the microphone.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to just take it. Can I take it off the...
You want this?
Yeah, give me that, will you?
Yeah, I think you'd do better.
Don't worry, I took the battery out.
Such a friend.
He said put it up high.
Better? Is that working? Great. Thank you, guys. Okay, now we're ready to rock and roll. How valuable do readers find various industry information sources, and how do readers use print and online sources? Okay, now my clicker's not working. There it is. We started out with a sample, again, of meat and poultry processors of 14,968. This was an online survey, so there's probably a bit of bias going in because it was an online survey. But that's the quickest and easiest way to get folks to tell you what's on their mind. We had a total of 678 surveys, a 5% response rate, which is very good. I think anyone who's done research in this room would agree that that's a fair number and a pretty good sample. Who were these folks? We had a pretty good cross-section of the larger processors, the smaller to intermediate size guys. So we tried to pick a list that would be representative of the Tysons and the Hormels, as well as the intermediate and mid-sized processors. This was almost exclusively a further processed. There was, I think 40% of the participants were involved in some way, shape, or form in slaughter. Species processed, not surprisingly. This is pretty much in line with what you'd expect, given the previous demographics. The job role, again, we wanted to get a good cross-section of folks, executives, plant operations people, R&D, QA, QC, sales and marketing, purchasing. The study results in terms of use of industry information sources. And again, this is a short synopsis of this, but these are some of the key findings. What we found was 70% of those surveyed still value print trade magazines. Now, that doesn't mean that they value them more than digital or more than online. And as Bill said, I think what we're finding is we're seeing a balance. We're finally seeing an equilibrium where when the internet first reared its head, there was this sort of rush to it. And I think people have realized that while it's a fantastic tool, it shouldn't be exclusive of the other. So there's been a little bit of retracing there. But all this says is that print, in spite of all of the attacks on it in general terms, is still faring very well and is still highly valued by processors. We asked the question because something that I think we all struggle with on this table is, are we doing too much? I mean, is enough enough? How many more emails can we send? How much more information can we put in someone's inbox on a daily basis? And this is not surprising. I suppose it's a little bit troubling for all of us, but 52% of those that we surveyed said they were either at or kind of reaching a point of digital overload. There's just not enough hours in a day to pile through everything they're getting. How many hours do you spend online, not including reading and sending emails? And this was interesting based on title. As you can see, plant operations and engineering titles are spending less time online, less than an hour a day. Executive management, 52% of those are spending less than an hour a day. As you slide down to sales and marketing, you see that number increase substantially to more than 2 hours a day. And I think what that accounts for is companies like Cargill and Tyson that have floors of people who are doing research and sales and marketing and market metrics they're probably spending an awful lot of time online where we're seeing the plant operations people who are on the floor in the plant a little bit less time. No denying that the time has increased. If I showed you this study 5 years ago, you know, the internet would still be sort of a fledgling entity, and it's certainly increased. Through which devices do you typically access online industry news and information? Bill's right; he's exactly right. But this number again. We did a similar survey 2 years ago, and that iPad number didn't even exist, and now it's 20%. So it is coming. Smartphones are at, I think that's 38%. Pardon my failing eyesight. And then 98% are still PC, desktop, laptop. But again, I think if we look at this survey in coming years, you'll see those lower bars start to expand to the right. During the last 5 months, have you done the following? Viewed an industry video, participated in a webinar, or downloaded an industry podcast? As Bill said, video is kind of where it's at. There's an awful lot of interest there. And 73% of those surveyed said they viewed some industry video. Do you or others from your company use the following types of social media? I was surprised at Facebook, but my guess is that a lot of this is personal use bleeding over into business use. I'm still not myself convinced that Facebook makes a lot of sense for us where we sit today, but we'll see. LinkedIn, obviously, that's got more of a business focus to it, so it's got a strong number. And Twitter is on the rise. 37% of those surveyed are either tweeting or reading tweets. The value of industry information sources. Again, we asked them on a scale of 1 to 7 to tell us how valuable they found the following industry information sources. Print is still, again, holding up very well at 5.8%. Online digital trade magazines, which would include, as Bill described, iPad viewership, which again, that is, we've got our digital magazine both on a laptop and on the iPad, and the iPad is a much better experience all the way around. Online e-newsletters from trade publishers at 4.8%. Online trade publisher websites, whether that's meatandpoultry.com or meetingplace.com. Online webinars, webcasts, videos, and podcasts at 4.7. Online e-newsletters from suppliers, so information that you might be sending out to your customers at 4.6, I believe that is. And then buyer's guides and directories on the print side at 4.5%, and online buyer's guides at 4.3%. So the old print buyer's guide each year is having a little tougher time holding its own versus digital. In your opinion, which source represents you with the most credible content? And this is not meant to be a jab at the industry suppliers here in attendance, but 90% of those surveyed said that they found industry trade magazines, e-news, and websites to be the most credible. 10% supplier-generated newsletters, print, and email. Use of industry information sources when they're considering equipment purchase decisions. When you're considering a new equipment purchase, which sources do you use to help you make a decision? Equipment manufacturers' websites was at 70%. This is an interesting slide, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Industry trade magazines was at 68%. Word of mouth, I think, is 66%. Industry trade shows fared pretty well. Search engines, and then industry trade websites. So our own websites. I think what's missing here is some interpretation as to how do these people get to the equipment manufacturers' websites. And we could probably make an argument that while that number at the bottom is small, a lot of those people could have gotten to that website from an ad or a mention they saw on a website or in a magazine. And that's basically, again, I didn't want to bore you with a ton of slides, but I wanted to give you a flavor of really what your customers are saying in terms of how they're using media. I think there were some slides there that surprised us. There were some there that kind of confirmed our hunches. But I think, as Bill said, in general terms, I think these two mediums do work together. Print is not passe, digital is certainly coming on. I think there's lots of unique ways you can use both of those to build your platform. Yeah, thank you. Want to move over? Yeah, sure, no problem. Okay.
How's this work? Can you hear me now? I'm going to stand over here. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank David Seckman and Adam Finney for giving me the opportunity to present here at the FPSA Sales Conference. One of the things that kind of came up, I showed them kind of a similar study that Food Engineering did a few months ago, and Adam thought that some of our slides kind of fits nicely with the theme of today's presentation: print versus electronic media. What strategy is right for you? So hopefully, after the two presentations from my predecessors, and based on this information, you should be able to put together a strategy that's just kind of right for you. Dave did steal a little bit of my thunder because I'm showing you kind of some similar information, but what's interesting is a lot of the information that we uncovered through the subscribers of Food Engineering kind of match nicely with what and it's kind of nice that we're getting this kind of the same feedback from our readers. So what this is, I'm going to show you Food Engineering did a major reader survey in February of this year. We sent out 10,000 email subscribers. This data is based on 211 respondents. We didn't get as many respondents as Dave did. This survey is fairly long. There were like 50 questions, so I think we kind of ran into a little bit of respondent fatigue. If any of you folks that have Paul Kelly calling on you, I think, Tom, you might have seen some of these presentations, some of these boards. So hopefully, maybe if you hear it a second time, you'll get a little bit more information from it. But in any event, we kind of asked them. The owners of our company wanted to get some feedback from our subscribers on what I'm going to show you here is where your customers, our subscribers, where they get their information. 2, we're going to talk a little bit about social media. And 3, we're going to talk a little bit about technology adoption and what your customers and prospects are using when it comes to technology. So we asked them, do you have internet access at work? The majority of them, in fact, do have internet access at work. 65% and say they have access to a laptop, desktop, and a BlackBerry. And the majority of them do at least access the internet at least once a day, and 20% they do it daily. And then we were trying to get none of this information I'm going to show you is really kind of specific to Food Engineering. I didn't think that would be real appropriate to share that type of information, but this is more kind of generic information on what type of business-to-business information and so forth, what your customers are interested in. And we asked them, have you read any of the following types of publications that worked during the past 6 months? So business-to-business trade magazines, e-newsletters, technical publications were kind of the top 3. Followed by digital versions of newspapers and magazines. And we asked them topics of interest in the information sources that you're looking for. And what's interesting is the majority of them, when they're getting information at work for their job, they want industry news specific to their occupation, kind of followed by national news and then kind of local and regional news. And then we asked them, please rate how frequently you access or gather information specifically to your industry. And trade magazines, technical publications, word of mouth, conferences, books, and trade shows were the top ones. And certainly this, in terms of trade shows being at the bottom, this certainly isn't a knock on trade shows, but with Process Expo, it's every other year. Trade shows are just once a year typically, so that's the reason why they don't, you're only doing that once a year versus a trade magazine. We're publishing something 12 times a year. Now we asked them how frequently you access or gather information specifically to your industry occupation when it comes to the internet. So search engines were number 1, vendor websites were number 2, and trade magazine websites were number 3, followed by webinars. So I thought this was interesting. specific information that, your customers and prospects value getting information from you from your particular websites. Social media websites, blogs, virtual trade shows, kind of well down the list when it comes to getting specific industry information about them. Preferred sources for receiving industry information. They prefer trade magazines, either print or digital, followed by e-newsletters, in-person trade shows. So the top 3 are magazines, e-newsletters, and in-person trade shows, followed by webinars. And social media websites are kind of well down on the list. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about social media usage. We asked our subscribers, what are the top 3 social media websites that you use for, and this was specifically for business purposes. So I think it's probably one of the differences that Dave's slide was a little bit different than our slide, where LinkedIn, Google+, YouTube, Wikipedia, and Facebook were kind of in order. Twitter was kind of down on the list, and we thought this was kind of interesting. 25% of the respondents says they don't have access to social media websites for business purposes. So we thought that was kind of interesting. And then how often you log into social media websites for business purposes. So they're really not doing it all that often, 35% once a week, and very few are doing it more than once a day. And then when they are on it, they're not on it certainly very long. Less than 63% say they respond, they do it less than 30 minutes. And then we also asked them, are you interested in receiving, kind of business-related information specifically to your occupation through social media? And for the most part, they weren't very interested. And, a small percentage of them, 16% were either interested or very interested in receiving, business-related information through social media. Now, technology usage, a lot of this information kind of dovetails nicely with what you've kind of saw before with Dave's presentation. In fact, it's almost the exact same percentage. We asked them, do you have an iPad, and do you use it for business purposes? And 17% said yes, 80% did not have an iPad that they use for business purposes. One of my customers is a company called SolarSoft, and they offer a software solution for OEE and lean manufacturing. And they're offering an iPad app for their software where an operations guy or engineering guy can, pull up his line speeds and so forth right off of his iPad. And so I think when more software companies are starting to use these types of applications, I think we're probably going to see a lot more adaption of iPads used kind of certainly for business purposes. And kind of the next slide I thought was kind of interesting. We asked them, if you don't have an iPad, do you intend to buy one during the next 12 months? And 64% said they don't have plans to purchase an iPad during the next 12 months. So it's not quite there yet. Smartphone ownership, 71% said they have a smartphone, iPhone, Android, or BlackBerry. Mobile tagging, what's interesting is they're very familiar with QR codes and so forth, but not a lot of them are using it. I think it's really kind of more for consumer products and consumer applications than it is certainly for kind of business to business purposes. Online video, I think this kind of dovetails nicely with what Bill had mentioned when it comes to videos. Do you use or view online videos for business purposes? And 3/4 of them said they do. So, you guys are all, equipment manufacturers. I know you have videos on your websites, and what's interesting, the things that they're most interested in are, product demonstrations and then instructional uses of videos. And when they don't look at videos all the time, but when they do, they're usually once a week or a couple times per month as they're looking at videos for business purposes. My slides are a little out of whack. Now we're going to talk a little bit about demographics. This is kind of the demographics of the people. Keep in mind, these are the people who responded to the survey. The demographics of food engineering is a little bit different than this. For some reason, the respondents from the engineering, design, and construction companies and OEMs, companies like yourself, kind of responded a lot more to our survey than did your customers and prospects. So these are the people that responded. So it's a nice cross-section of all segments in the food industry. These are respondents by age. So it's interesting, the respondents by age, I think here, and the demographics of this, I think, are pretty much the same. 80% male. There's a few women in the audience. The average age here might be around 49, maybe a little less, might be a little more. And these are respondents by job title, engineering, plant operations, general illustrations. And then we had a smart ass said he was a bartender. It's always got to be a wise guy in the audience. Level of education. Your customers, our readers, are a very well-educated group. 76% have at least a college education, okay, and 41% have done at least some graduate work, either a master's degree or a PhD. And then this is our respondents by region. South and the Midwest had the most response. Other than California, there's not a lot of food and beverage processing done certainly in the mountain states, so these figures kind of match up nicely with our subscriber base. And then in terms of the respondents for where they came from, a lot of them came from medium-sized to larger companies. So that's it. So thank you for your time. I know I kind of spent a lot of time going through some of these slides. I've got a copy of it. If you're interested in getting more information, feel free to let me know, and I think we're going to probably take some questions from the audience.
Yeah, anybody, you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll bring the microphone over.
Thank you. Very good presentations. In looking at your data, the statistical data, what didn't pop out to me was any kind of trends. It seemed like point-in-time responses. I mean, obviously, with younger people coming more into the businesses and their aptitude for digital and social media coming with that, an average year of 49-year-old person answering these things may not give, it's a spot in time. Any comments or from any of you on that, and do we really expect it to be increasing as much as I think?
Well, as I mentioned, this is a snapshot in time. And again, if you looked at this, at similar surveys that we've done yearly with meat and poultry readers, you'd be surprised. I mean, iPad use has skyrocketed. The one slide, sadly, though, that was missing here was the amount of time per day that respondents are spending online. We had a deeper look at that, and it's significant. So there's no denying that we're moving in that direction. But again, I think the important thing to keep in mind is, TV didn't replace radio. These mediums do have benefits that the other can't deliver. And I think to Bill's point, and I know Patrick touched on this, it's the ability to partner up your objectives, to look at print and know what its limitations are, and then look at digital and know what its limitations are. Build your program that way, as opposed to just saying, I'm going to run 12 full-page ads and hope for the best, or I'm going to have somebody in the back room slap together a banner ad with something flashing and hope that it, sends my sales through the roof.
Well, no, I mean, Tom, it's definitely a generational thing. There's no doubt about it. And I'm fairly certain that we could probably take this data and get results by age, okay, and so forth. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing kind of a similar survey next year and the year after that, so we can start to see trends, and we'll be able to show, do like side-by-side comparisons of the same response from we did in 2012 versus 2013 and 2014. I mean, your customers, you've got a lot of folks that are retiring. I think Heinz has got like a 55-year-old mandatory retirement age, and it's going to be a big issue for your customers and prospects, is to attract the new engineers and get the younger people into the marketplace to replace the guys that are retiring and so forth. So, and I think once you get the younger engineers that are using social media and they've been brought up on the smartphones and so forth, you'll see you'll see greater adaption of some of these things. But, you know, I mean, we're in a mature marketplace, and it's very conservative, and, you know, these, you know, your customers and prospects, they're not necessarily early adopters of new technology, but it's certainly going in that direction.
Yeah, first of all, I agree with Tom. He's right on. You know, you ignore this coming cohort at your peril. I mean, it reminds me of when you're surveying right now, it's almost like asking the buggy whip manufacturers what they think about the invention of the automobile. You know, they don't like it.
I want a faster buggy.
Yeah. So it's coming. There's no denying that. But I think the other thing that we need to think about here in this room is the implications of all this on how we actually go to market. Because one thing is what people are using to get their information, but the other simple fact is that today when a customer typically addresses us, they already have all the facts. They've done their research. They've already decided they're going to buy something. We're not helping them in that process like we used to 20 years ago. And we have to think about what that means to the type of people we put in front of the customers, because you don't need necessarily the features and benefits sales guy anymore, because the customer's already determined that on his own. So we're looking at a whole different way of going to market, I would say, in this process. And I think that that's the other thing that we have to be very aware of as we see the digital revolution going forward.
Well, the information is there, and people are taking advantage of it. And I think all you have to do is look at yourself as a consumer. And how do you approach going to buy a television or an automobile or anything else? Most of us do our homework, and when we arrive at the retailer, or in this case, when our suppliers come to see us, we've done a lot of that groundwork. I don't need to know who you are, what you do, what your features and benefits are. I need to know if you're going to be able to do things for me that I need done that maybe somebody else can't do. So you're right on, Yen.
So on the topic of print measurement, going back to that, do you recommend just saying that print is for brand awareness and connecting it to a strong publication and your brand and having a nice big flashy ad in a publication that has a great reputation for content and articles and things? Or do we keep trying to put videos behind QR codes and watching the views for measurement as one point?
I think you're right on with what you said, but I don't think you stop there. I think you do want good, credible media partners that you're putting your ads in. I think you want good, creative ads that go beyond features and benefits, but attract attention and move whether it's your awareness or your whatever your messaging may be. But when it comes to the word measurement, I don't think you're doing a lot of that with any of what you're mentioning there. I think you're just making smart media decisions. Measurement, I think you can go out and you can measure an audience for whatever you want ahead of time and say, what's our benchmark? What's our awareness? What's our preference? You know, where do we stand vis-a-vis the competition? And from there, you can do follow-up benchmark studies at a later time. You can also use readership studies that many of the magazines provide. I know we do 2 a year. I know Dave does at least 1, maybe 2. And those can tell you a lot about your ad and give you a lot of feedback on what's going on. So there's a lot of measurement tools that you can use, and I think that's one of the things that's kind of been lost is there is measurement available with print. It's just not as easy, and it's not as it's not out there for anybody. You're getting these reports from the magazines or the media brands pushed to you, whereas if you want to do measuring on print, you're having to go out and ask, or you're having to initiate it yourself.
I think just to dovetail on that, I think one thing to think about when you're thinking about print or digital, but especially print, I think the environment is very relevant. People reading magazines expect to see ads, and they don't consider the ads intrusive. I mean, if you're a golfer and you're reading Golf Digest, or you're a car buff and you're reading Car and Driver, the ads are part of the experience. And if you're a meat processor, or you're an engineer, or you're a food safety guy or lady, and you're flipping through the magazine, the ads almost become part of the editorial product, and it's not looked upon as being intrusive.
Hey, Bill, I wanted to ask a question pertaining to the metrics. You had mentioned that there's a lot of metrics that you're using, and kind of get an indication between the electronic and the print.
Well, I think I went over a little bit on what the print are, and that's primarily having to do some old-fashioned research to get in, to do benchmarking, to use readership studies. On the electronic side, there's lots of things available. Most publishers are going to measure how many impressions your ad gets, how many click-throughs it gets. They may even have a mechanism to generate sales leads for you. At our publishing company, we've taken the philosophy of we want everyone to register so we can separate the wheat from the chaff. And what we do is we report who saw your ad, what's their name, what's their title, what's their company name, how many times did they see it, what action did they take, did they watch your video, did they click through and go to your website, and then if they say, please have JBT contact me, we send out a hard sales lead with all their contact information at that point in time. So I think there are basic metrics out there, and then I think some of the publishing companies that have adopted the registration process are able to provide even more information above and beyond that.
So to kind of piggyback on that, you're talking a lot about personalized metrics based on, who saw the ad and that. Do you see an opportunity for to take that a step further and advertise only to a particular group that you want to focus on? So more ads within your magazine?
Well, we don't do it so much in print, although we could.
Right, but digitally.
But digitally, we do it already. We do a thing called profile-based targeting where you say, this is the person I want to reach. I want to reach people that make bacon. And your ad will only show up in front of people that make bacon. It's as simple as that. And that's because of the registration process. You can't get that everywhere, but it's something that's fairly unique that we do.
We've got a similar segmentation program like that. It's almost impossible to do it in print. I mean, you'd have to be printing many multiples of your magazine to try and deliver it just to that area. But whether it's segmentation where we can track who's doing what and serve your ad to that group, or whether it's something like eBlasts where you can take a look at our database and we can drill down very deeply into that database, and we can say, you want to reach red meat processors doing $150 million a year just in these 3 states. We can find those people for you, and we can deliver a message on. We won't give you that list, but we can deliver a message on your behalf that's very, very focused just to that audience.
Years ago in our industry, decades ago actually, there was an outfit called MMMI. And I recall members combining some money. We hired an independent firm to come back to us and say where we should be spending our advertising dollars with what trade journals. And they did this individual survey, independent survey, and they came back, and the results were shocking. There were 4 trade journals in our industry back then. They came back with 1 on top, 1 in second place, and then the 3rd best read journal in our industry was the Wall Street Journal, with no mention of the other 2. And that pointed clearly way back then that there's a point of diminishing return in advertising in more than 2 of the 4 journals, and that was decades ago. I've since seen surveys that say basically the same thing. I'd like both your comments on that. If you 2 had to spend our money, would you put it in more than 2 books?
I can't speak to the market, but for the most part, I think you're only going to have 2 books to put it in before it's over with, because things are moving fast, and you're right. There's a thing called law of diminishing returns. It's been studied by McGraw-Hill. It's been studied by my former employer, which was Reed or Connors, either one. They went by both names. And what they came out with is basically you reach most of your target market with the first magazine, and this is when it was just print magazines, and you pick up maybe an additional 7% or so with the second magazine, then after that you're not picking up much of anything. So I think that's been the rule for years, and I think it remains today.
Yeah, I think that's, and it probably sounds self-serving, but I think that is sort of a proven media fact. There's nothing wrong with some repetition of message, obviously, but after two, as Bill said, there's such a drop-off given what you're spending to reach a minute % of the market that you've not already reached twice.
Any further questions? Thank you very much, gentlemen. It was very informational.